God bless you. Hi, I'm Mother Teresa, but my parents named me Agnieszka. My greatest achievement was giving my life to the poor. I was born August 27th, 1910. My mother and father loved me very much and encouraged me to help the poor, even though we didn't have much money ourselves. I've always loved to spread the gospel. When I was 12, I went to school when I was moved by the missionary work in Bengal. I was never married and never had any children, even though I loved them very much. I became a nun at age 18, May 24th, 1931. I was a Roman Catholic nun who served the church. I served the church because I felt a call to God to help people in need. I died September 5th, 1997, at the age of 87 due to heart problems. Like I always said, if I never become a saint, I will certainly be one with darkness.
Hello there, I'm a time traveler getting ready to go to the time of the Industrial Revolution to meet Henry Ford and Ada Lovelace. Can you join me? Here we go.
Well, hello there. I am Henry Ford.
Hello there, Ford. I was wondering if I could talk to you about how you helped the Industrial Revolution further develop.
I changed the factory environment, creating an assembly line system, significantly improving production efficiency. Now workers don't need to move around to work on the parts, and the factory is organized so workers can stay stationary while a vehicle rolls down an assembly line.
What is the most significant accomplishment coming from the Industrial Revolution?
I am most proud of the automobiles and that I helped to produce. They even named the Ford car brand after me.
Very interesting, Ford. Thank you for the time, but I need to go. Well, friends, now we know how Henry Ford helped the Industrial Revolution. Now let's go to see Ada Lovelace. Ada Lovelace, just the person I wanted to see. Can you tell me about your life at this time?
Thank you for having me here. I can tell you about my time during the Industrial Revolution. In the early 1800s, Richard Trevithick invented the steam-powered locomotive. In 1830, similar locomotives started transporting freight and passengers throughout the industrial hubs of Manchester and Liverpool. More than 2,000 miles of canals were in use across Britain by 1815.
Well, now you know what life was like in the time of the Industrial Revolution. Thank you for your attention and joining me on the trip, but now I gotta go.
You may know me as the Secretary of Defense or Mr. 11 Rings, but most people know me as Bill. Hi, I'm Bill Russell. You may know me as a basketball player or civil rights activist. I was born in 1934 in Monroe, Louisiana. My parents are Katie and Charlie, and I had a brother named Charlie. I had a hard childhood when I was growing up because I grew up poor and my mother died when I was 12. In high school, Coach Powell helped me develop my skills in basketball. I was recruited by the University of San Francisco, and where Coach Wolpert helped me develop my defensive skills in basketball. I was recruited by the Boston Celtics in 1956. I won 11 championship rings in my 13 seasons of playing NBA basketball. I won 5 MVP awards, and I was selected 3 times to All-NBA first teams. I was also the first African-American coach in the NBA. You may know me for my basketball career, however, I was passionate about the fight for civil rights. I fought against racism no matter who alienated me or what it did to my public popularity. I led the march from Roxbury to Boston Common. I marched with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in Washington, and I won the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I died July 31st, 2022. Remember, concentration and mental toughness are the margins of victory.
We're going to Texas. My name is Davy Crockett, born in 1786 in Tennessee. I was a pioneer of the American West and U.S. congressman who established the Politician Book Tour. I was also known for my public speakings and my humor in public speakings. I was an excellent hunter who killed 105 bears in one hunting season. I ran away from home at the age of 13. The reason that I ran away from home was because my father was abusing me. My father would abuse me because I wanted to attend a school that had established nearby. He did not like the idea of people going to school. He thought it was a waste of time. So we could just do field work instead of go to school. When I ran away, I went to Texas. I had an army of 31 men. The War of the Independence of Texas was going on at that time. When we arrived at the Alamo, we were surrounded by all sides in the middle of the night. There was no way to escape. That's how I died at the Alamo.
Okay, Happy Little Trees by me. Hi, I'm Bob Ross, and today I'll be telling you about my life. As you probably already know, I'm a famous painter, but there's a lot you don't know about me yet. I was born on October 29, 1942, Daytona Beach, Florida. I dropped to school in ninth grade to help my dad as a carpenter. When I turned 18, I enlisted in the United States Air Force. While I was stationed in Alaska, I took my very first painting class. When I was painting in my military painting class, I learned a technique that would jumpstart my career: wet on wet. The wet on wet paint, I first learned the wet on wet painting technique from a painter named Bill Alexander. The wet on wet painting technique is where you put white paint on the canvas and then continue painting while the canvas is still wet. Bill Alexander had a show called The Magic of Oil Painting. Well, it aired from 1974 to 1982. I retired from the military in 1981. And when I retired from the military, I started doing private lessons with Bill Alexander. After 2 years of private lessons, I started my own show called The Joy of Painting. Well, my show started in 1983, and it lasted 11 years. It ended in 1993. 1 year, when I turned 51, I turned 51 in 1994, and was diagnosed with lymphoma. Lymphoma is a rare cancer that you get from paint thinner. 1 year after, on July 4th, 1995, I died. You might forget me, but never forget, you don't make mistakes, just make happy little accidents.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Hi, I am Neil Armstrong. I was the first person to walk on the moon. I was born on August 5th, 1930. Ever since I was a little boy, I loved airplanes and flying. My dad took me on my first airplane ride when I was 6 years old in an airplane known as the Tin Goose. I earned my student pilot license on my 16th birthday before I even had my driver's license. At the age 17, I started studying aeronautical engineering at Purdue University. In 1951, in the Korean War. In 1951, I was in the Korean War. While over in Korea, I flew in 78 missions, was shot down once, and awarded 3 air medals. After my service with the Navy, I returned back to college. Returned back to Purdue to finish my college. I graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in January 1955 while at college. I met my first wife, Janet, and we got married on 1956. We had 3 children, and 6 years later, I joined the space program. After serving as a backup commander for Apollo 8, I became commander for Apollo 11. My crewmates were Buzz Aldrin, Michael Collins. 1 year later, a Saturn rocket launched my crewmates and I to the moon. 4 days later, and 238,900 miles, the Eagle landed on the moon. I was the first man to step off the ship and onto the moon. Buzz and I spent 2 hours collecting samples, taking pictures, and conducting experiments. Our return to Earth was on July 24th, and it was celebrated all over the world. I retired from NASA in 1972. A biography of my life was released in 2005 titled First Man, Life of Neil Armstrong. On August 25th, 2012, I died of complications related to heart bypass surgery. I was 82 years old, and my achievements were remembered by all Americans. One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Have you heard about COVID-19? Well, whether you have or haven't, I'm going to tell you about the start of COVID, what it's like now, and how to help prevent the spread of it. Now, let's start at the very beginning. COVID-19 was first discovered in China after multiple patients came into the hospital with the same symptoms. Even though the doctors soon learned that they each had the same virus, they decided not to tell the public until they knew more about it. This turned out to be a disaster though, because while they did learn where it started, it ended up spreading out of China, making it nearly impossible to stop. Now, 3 years later, COVID-19 has infected nearly 700 million people and killed 7 million people, and thousands more people are getting and dying from it each day. But after 3 years, some methods have been discovered to help slow the spread of COVID, and I will tell you these methods so you can help slow it. Now, you might be thinking slowing the spread of COVID must be difficult, but really, it is quite simple. All you have to do is things like wear a mask, make sure your hands are clean, and stay a decent distance away from others. You can also occasionally COVID test yourself to make sure that you don't have COVID. And if you do, you can stay at your house for 5 or more days to make sure you can't give anyone else COVID. Now, after you know all this information, you too can help slow the spread of COVID along with many others.
The show is about to start. Howdy, I'm Calamity Jade. I was most known for being Buffalo Bill's acquaintance. I was born in 1852, in May, as Martha Jane Canary. My childhood wasn't very great. I was the eldest of 6 children. We moved to Deadwood, South Dakota. My mother died when we first got there. My father was sick of living there, so we moved to Utah. But my father died on the way. It was just me and my siblings. As I grew up, I started dressing like a man, and I started to have a big gun in my hand all the time. I also rode a horse a lot too, so I started being a frontierswoman. People also said I had a lot of sailor's mouth, so that is how I got my name, Calamity Jane. Once at a wagon training, I met Wild Bill. Wild Bill asked me if I'd like to be in his show. I accepted it gracefully. I was 12 when I started performing. Unfortunately, I got knocked out because I got in trouble with illegal substances, drugs, alcohol, etc. After that, I had to live on the road for a while, my horse and a big gun, until I met this great guy, William P. Steers, that asked me if I needed help. I told him I was taking on the Buffalo Bill show and why, and he allowed me to stay with him for the time being. After that, we moved to Deadwood. A couple months later, I was pregnant with a baby girl, Jessie, 1887. After I gave birth, I was working as a nurse treating smallpox to young children. After that, I got much better. I recovered from alcohol and drugs, and I was welcomed back into the Buffalo Bill show. Unfortunately, I got kicked out for the same thing. But I moved back to Deadwood, and I drank a little bit, and then I healed more kids, and then I drank a lot more, and I was welcomed back into the Buffalo Bill. No, I wasn't. Sorry. I died in 1903. I died in 1903 of alcoholism. I was a role model to little girls who weren't afraid to get dirty, and to little girls who wore jeans instead of dresses. I said to them, if a girl wants to be a cowgirl, if a girl wants to be a legend, she should just go ahead and be one, or cowgirl up.
Do you need your pets checked up? Well, I can do the job. Hi, I'm Dr. Elinor McGrath, and I'm widely known as the first female veterinarian in the U.S. I was born in 1888 in Milwaukee County, Wisconsin. I developed a love for animals early on and was determined to overcome barriers to enter the male-dominated field. I was successful in this adventure, and in 1907, I became the first woman to admit to Chicago Veterinary College. At the time, the nation relied heavily on farm animals, but I chose to build my practice around pets, a decision that many thought was odd. I was a 1910 graduate of Chicago Veterinary College, and I became AVMA's first female member. I also received my MBA degree from business school. I had some struggles along the way at some of the schools I have attended at. I've gotten bullied, harassed, pushed, and even punched. But those are behind me now. I've always looked forward into my future life, never back. I practiced veterinary medicine for 37 years, and I also established Chicago's first pet cemetery, recognizing the strength and importance of the human-animal bond. I have cried when they sadly couldn't save a family's beloved pets back alive. I have had some very tough times as a vet. I retired in 1947 because of health issues. Even after I retired as a vet, I still love animals very much. I died June 19, 1963 in Arkansas. I had a great laugh as a vet, and I will always be proud of my impact on animals' lives.
I wasn't the leader of any gang. I was for Billy all the time. Hi, my name is Henry McCarty, but you may know me as Billy the Kid. I was born in 1859 in New York, New York. I was very young when my dad died. Not long after, my mom remarried and we moved to New Mexico. That's when my journey began. In 1876, I worked as a ranch hand, and that's when I killed my first of many men, a group of Apache Indians. Soon after that, I killed a blacksmith in Arizona. In 1878, I became the leader of a posse that was sent to catch the men who killed John Tunstall. For the next several years, we spent our time out on the run for the murder of Sheriff Brady. In 1880, I was captured by Sheriff Garrett for that murder. In 1881, I was found guilty and was sentenced to hang. The judge said, "You are sentenced to be hanged by the neck until you are dead, dead, dead." And I replied, "You can go to hell, hell, hell." 2 weeks before my hanging, I escaped by killing both jailers. On July 14th, 1881, Fort Sumner, New Mexico, Sheriff Garrett found me in Pete Maxwell's house. Sheriff Garrett ambushed me and shot me dead. People will always remember me as the most famous outlaw that has ever lived.
My name is George, and on the day of 9/11, I was on a business trip heading to Los Angeles on Flight 11. The plane took off at 7:59 a.m. Shortly after, 3 guys got up and started heading to the cockpit. "Get on the ground," they said over and over again. I wanted to be a hero by getting up and stopping them, but I didn't trust my gut. It was 5-1 odds, and I tried to get others to help, but only 1 out of the 76 passengers on the plane agreed to help. After we made a plan, he said he didn't want to get hurt, and I said that was fine. As I saw the plane getting lower and lower to the ground, I saw my life flash before my eyes. The Flight 11 hit the North Tower at 8:46 a.m. 2,766 people died that day. 10,000 people escaped with their lives from the Twin Towers, and there's 4 planes that were hijacked. 2 of the 4 hit the Twin Towers, and the other 2 hit the Pentagon and crashed in a field.
Hi, I'm a person that worked at the World Trade Center, and I'm going to tell you the story on how I died. I walked in for work thinking it would be a normal day, but only an hour after I walked through those doors, a plane out of nowhere hit the tower next to us, and no one knew what to do, except for a group of people that immediately jumped up and ran for the elevator. But with how many people were in the building, it was never going to move. Some people just sat there after what just happened. I don't know if they were just stunned and couldn't move, or somehow didn't see or hear it happen. But I just jumped up and ran for the stairs, bumping past everyone I could. The only times I would stop running would be if I saw someone tripped or fell. I'd help them up and continued running. But that's when I heard the thing I was most worried about, the crashing of another plane. I heard the building start to collapse and the stairs crushing down on me and the other 9 people I was with. But me and those 9 people aren't the only ones who died during 9/11. 2,977 other people died to this act, and it will never be forgotten.
Hi, I'm a firefighter during 9/11. I heard a boom when I was on duty at the station. Everyone stood in a daze, having no idea what was going on. I looked up and I saw smoke coming from the North Tower. As it fell, immediately, I ran and put my uniform on. I thought it must have been an accident at first. On the way there, it was getting darker and darker. When we got there, I immediately began running up the building and saving people. Eventually, I found people caved in. I grabbed my axe. There was screaming and panic everywhere. I cracked 5 boards and I kicked the last one down. I quickly got them out and showed them to the stairs. I heard the building falling, and I was getting scared. I decided to keep on going up. On the way up, I kept on rescuing people, and I eventually found some more people under a pile of rubble. I quickly got 2 of them out, and when I was getting the last person out, I heard it falling again. It fell on me, and a piece of the cement block hit me in the head. I breathed my last breath in the North Tower that day, but I am proud I died as a hero. We all died as heroes during 9/11, and we hope you understand the emotions families had to endure. There was a total of 2,977 deaths. 421 of those were emergency workers, and 343 of those were firefighters.
I raise.
I'll call.
Oh, I didn't see you there. Were you looking at my cards? I'm Dale Negrado. I won 2 World Poker Tour championships.
My name's Alex Foxon. I've won 5 Diamond World Poker Classic and numerous high roll tournament victories. Let's go back to the roots of poker, see where it all begins. Texas home poker first came about in the 1900s.
In a little town known as Robstown, Texas.
From there, it stayed unnoticed until it was launched in 1967 in Las Vegas.
Poker is a game based on luck, strategy, and gambling. The World Poker Tour has been around for 21 years. It has been broadcasted globally in more than 150 countries and territories.
Today, 84% of Americans have been to a casino.
And more than half have gone to a casino more than 6 times.
But what really matters is 3 out of 5 have actually made a vacation out of going to one.
And that's my kind of facts.
The World Poker Tour has a revenue with a franchise of $18.9 million a year.
Jeez.
Personally, I love the fact that it involves knowledge and understanding in order to win. But Daniel, what do you think about it?
I love the constant rush of betting, along with the big first-place prizes worth thousands of dollars.
Poker is America. It shows how much fun us Americans like to have, even if we lose our bank accounts while we're at it.
Now, before we go, I'd like to share one of my most famous quotes. Most players are looking for a reason to fold. I'm looking for a reason to play.
Now, thank you for your time. Now we got to get back to our game. Let's go.
Hello, folks, and welcome to another episode of Sports of the Century. Today we have Terry Bradshaw and Rick Barry, and we'll be asking them about 1970s sports. On to you, Terry Bradshaw. How is it different to 1970s to present day?
The game has changed a lot, mostly rules, but the equipment was also entirely different. The 70s was a different time for sure.
Basketball has changed a lot. It was more physical and harder fouls in the 70s. Was there any difference in scoring? There was no three-point line until 1979, so it made it harder to score more points like you see today. Lots has changed. Would you rather play currently or back when you did?
Although I do miss my teammates, the technology today would provide much more protection from all the injuries I had before. So I would rather play current day.
Even though I'd have less injuries, I would rather play in the 1970s because it was all around more fun. So Rick, why did you start shooting underhand free throws? I started shooting underhand free throws when I realized that it made my percent 89.3%. So, oh, that's impressive. So, how did you become a famous NFL player?
Lots of dedication and practice.
Just like Terry said, lots of dedication and practice. What was your guys' hardest competition in the 1970s?
Mine was Ed Too Tall Jones, who played for the Cowboys in the 1970s.
I would say my hardest competition was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who played for the Milwaukee Bucks. This is a question for both of you guys. Did you guys set any records?
I set a record in a Super Bowl for 9 touchdowns passed and 932 yards passing.
I set the record for leading the ABA, the NBA, and the NCAA in scoring. That's it, folks. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for Terry Bradshaw and Rick Barry for their time. Signing off with Sports of the Century.
3 from Indiana, Larry Bird. If it was easy, everybody would win 3 NBA championships and get picked 6 overall in the NBA draft. Hi, I'm Larry Bird. I was born in 1956. My loving parents were Georgia and Claude Joseph. I was born in 1956. My loving parents were Georgia and Claude Joseph. My parents divorced when I was still in high school. Shortly after, my dad committed suicide. I used basketball as an escape from my family troubles. I was I got a scholarship to play basketball at Indiana State. I was drafted in 1979 by the Boston Celtics. I didn't sign with the Celtics immediately. Instead, I played my final season with Indiana and led them to an NCAA championship. In my rookie season, I immediately transformed the Celtics to a championship competitor. I was named Rookie of the Year that season. Next season, I got new teammates, Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish. We won the finals that year, earning me my first NBA championship ever. Then for the next couple seasons, I got three MVPs in a row in the 80s and 2 more NBA championships. While all this was happening, I had a shoe deal with Converse. My people know me as an excellent shooter. My opponent said that I was a champion trash talker. I retired and became head coach of the Indiana Pacers. In my retirement, I enjoy steak dinners and a few rounds of golf. I've always said, if you give 100%, somehow things will work out.
Deborah Sampson joined the Army in 1781 by the name of Robert Shurtliff because women weren't allowed to join the military at the time. She joined a lot earlier than most women because most women were afraid to join any branch except the General Army.
In 1917, a Navy Secretary, Joseph Daniels, decided to enroll one woman in the U.S. Naval Reserve Force. Soon after establishing that, he thought that men would follow suit more and they would be embarrassed to quit with a woman working alongside of them. Later in 1917, Loretta Perfectius Walsh became the first American woman to join the Navy.
Also in 1917, the Hello Girls were created.
Who are the Hello Girls?
The Hello Girls were a group of women working in a female version of the Signal Corps during World War I.
The Hello Girls were neither operators, they were nurses. The women thought that this was unfair because they thought that they had the right to stand alongside the men in the front line.
What about the women in the present?
Many women nowadays don't realize the struggle and the perseverance that women in the past had to go through. The women in the past had to struggle a lot to get the women here today.
Men thought that women couldn't serve in the military or Navy. They thought they should only be able to take care of themselves, like taking care of children, cooking, cleaning, and taking care of the other men.
Did the woman ever have it more equal?
It did actually. In the late 1930s, women's uniforms included skirts, feminine hairstyles, nail polish, and feminine hairstyles were allowed and encouraged. Beyond this focus on femininity, women were finally recognized as vital members in the armed forces.
This was a big leap for women in the military and a big step for future generations such as ours.
But don't think everything was perfect for the women now. They still could not serve. They couldn't serve on the front lines and were still looked down upon.
If they were pregnant or not in shape or out of health, they wouldn't be able to join. They would have to get their mental health back up.
Only a few women met the requirements at this time because people only believed that women should cook, clean, and nurture children while all the men did all the hard work.
In 1941, Edith Norris Rogers introduced a bill for the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps, WAC, to be created. It was soon passed a couple of years later.
In 1942, President Franklin Roosevelt signed the NWRA Act into law, creating what is known as WAVES. This was so more and more men could be out on sea.
Eshima Blake joined the Air Force in 1944 and was the first woman to join an authorized Air Force base on July 8, 1948.
Also in 1948, after World War II, President Harry S. Truman signed the Women's Army Services Integration Act into law, officially allowing women to act as full permanent members of the armed forces.
During the Korean War in the 1950s, 120,000 women were stationed. Although they couldn't work on the front line, they started having new job opportunities, such as military, police officers, and engineers.
In 1955, 11,000 women were stationed. 90% of the women were nurses. The other stationed women were air traffic officers, clerks, intelligence officers, and in Vietnam and in their homes.
In the 1960s, President Lyndon B. Johnson allowed women to be promoted to general and flag ranks.
And in the 1970s, women were now allowed to command units that included men.
Also in the 70s, a bill was passed for women to enlist in the armed forces and some military academies.
And also Senator William Hathaway proposed a bill that advocated equal rights for women in the U.S. Army.
And in 1975, 2 years after the U.S. ended its involvement with the Vietnam War, the Pentagon announced that pregnant women can now stay in the Army service.
During the 80s, there were a lot of firsts. As more and more women broke the barriers and created titles of capital service members that are serving our country, the list of firsts slowly became less and less important as and noteworthy in comparison to the number of women serving, as well as significant contributions to their branches.
Many years have passed and women have now proven their faith and loyalty in the Army.
Women play a vital role in today's U.S. Army. They are leaders and so much more, but most importantly, they can finally stand in the front line with our troops.
They are members of the United States Army Civilian Corps, as well as
employers, mothers, sisters, and vital members of the Army.
As said by the U.S. Army Reserve.
And as you may know, this month is March, National Women's History Month.
Celebrating the perseverance of strong, independent women from the past, present, and future.
Thank you for your service, ladies.
Hello, I'm Pocahontas. You may know me as the Native American who saved John Smith. I was born in 1595 at Wirremoco, Virginia. I have 6 siblings. My father is Chief. His name is Chief Hudson. Many people think my mother died at childbirth. I was homeschooled. I didn't go to any real school. After I finished school, I learned how to hunt. I loved hunting bears. I've had a few names, but my birth name was Matoka. I earned the nickname Pocahontas because I loved exploring. After the Englishmen arrived in 1616, I loved going and delivering messages to Jamestown. That's where they lived. John Smith was the leader of Jamestown. John Smith was a man who came with the Englishmen in 1616. My father didn't trust John Smith due to superstition. I've had many important events happen in my life. After I saved John Smith from being killed, I was kidnapped by Captain Samuel Ardle. I was captured for almost 3 months. I was held ransom for the return of stolen weapons and English prisoners held by my father. My biggest accomplishment was helping John Smith seconds before his death by my father. He believed people would come from the lower Chesapeake and destroy him. I sadly died March 1st, 1617, due to pneumonia. I was buried at St. George Church. I've always been someone who has believed in doing the right thing at the right time. Always remember, sometimes the right path is not always the easiest.
Do you know about shoes? Because the 3 of us love shoes. Do you know heels are actually made for men? Well, they were worn in the 10th century to help the Persian cavalry keep their shoes in stirrups. Ever since then, they've been symbolizing high social stature, military powers, and other cultural meanings. Since you heard a little bit about shoes, let's get into the good stuff where you hear about the backgrounds, the type of shoes, and how they got their names. When you talk about shoes, do you say sneakers or tennis shoes? Because there have been multiple occasions where I have said tennis shoes or sneakers, and sometimes I think to myself, what's the difference? But actually there's no difference. They're in the same category, so meaning that even if you call them tennis shoes or sneakers, they're the same. Like Converse, people call them tennis shoes or just shoes. First they were made in 1908, and now people nowadays wear them for school, work, and other occasions. But before, they were made for basketball. They were made for basketball because of Mark Wismill, the creator of the shoe. And he found out about rubber. Finding out about rubber was a big deal back then. But once he discovered rubber, he put it to good use by putting it on the shoe for flexibility. Or even Jordans, the famously retired Apollo Michael Jordan wore these shoes. You're probably asking yourself, how were they named Jordans? Well, that's a good question. There are 2 reasons why the name and brand was named after Michael Jordan.
They had air soles, which means the soles were made out of air. Before shoelaces, there was Velcro on shoes, and Michael Jordan played basketball in Jordans that had Velcro on them, and that's how he played basketball before shoelaces.
But do you ever think about shoe protection? People get shoes and don't pay attention to the protection, and they just care about the comfort, like the protection and style. Sorry. And people have spent a lot of money on their shoe, and they don't think about all the things that has to come because they just care about that.
But in all, shoes were a great invention to be made for everybody, for both performance and fashion. We hope that you learned a lot about our invention and how it was made. Good night.
Be well, my friend. That was a quote with a special meaning by me, Bruce Lee. When I was a young boy trying out for a movie scene, they always cast me as juvenile delinquent or street urchin. When I was beginning to be seen with gangs, I always wanted to learn Kung Fu to be better at defending myself. My parents started getting disturbed when I showed up from the police station from gang violence, so they sent me to the United States when I turned 18. Don't worry, I live with friends and family in Seattle where I finished high school. I also learned a new hobby studying philosophy and drama at the University of Washington. At the time, 1964, I decided to try to build a business, a martial arts school, where I did all the teaching and training. Everything was going okay, except Jimmy from Oakland, California asked if I could teach him. So I did the responsible thing and said no and shut the door in his face. Just kidding, I had to relocate to Oakland, California. I had found a new school to teach in, which at the time I was learning a new technique called Jeet Kune Do, which is a blend of ancient Kung Fu, fencing, boxing, and philosophy. I knew that teaching Kung Fu was my function. When I was teaching a student a Kung Fu example, the television producer noticed me and was impressed with my skills. He was so impressed that I got invited to be on a show called The Green Hornet. Shortly after The Green Hornet killed me, it was hard to find other jobs. So I gained lots of reputation by giving Hollywood stars private Jeet Kune Do lessons. I briefly moved back to Hong Kong in 1971. I had lots of success with the United States because of the scene I did in 1973 called Enter the Dragon. It was the first joint venture between U.S. and Hong Kong. I sadly died right before the scene was released in 1973. People has always seen me as a born actor in martial arts. I have taught many people Jeet Kune Do and inspired many martial artists.
The die is cast. I'm Julius Caesar, was born 100 BC, Suba, Italy. My father is Julius Caesar, and my mother is Ulia. My parents did not have enough money, so I did not attend school like the rich kids did, so I was homeschooled. When I was a young man, I was taken by pirates. The men had 12 talents, but a man of my fame was worth 50 talents. I was set free after a month. As soon as I got back, I sent fleets of warships after them. As soon as the fleets got back, I put them into slavery. I was not satisfied, so I sentenced them to death. In 79 BC, I was 21 years old. I went to Asia because I was on Sula's list to be killed because I was Marius' nephew. Marius and Sula did not like each other, so I married Chin's daughter. Sula immediately ordered me to divorce my wife. I said no and ran to the mountains and went to Asia. I saw people fighting and saved one of the citizens. I earned a civic crown that was made out of oak leaves. A few years later, I conquered Gaul, while one of my friends and daughters had both died. My other friend had betrayed me. I asked him if he still wanted to be part of the family, and he said no, and he married the daughter of my foe. I chased after him into Alexandria in Egypt. Upon my arrival, I received a woven basket containing my friend's head. My bitter rival, once close ally, was now dead. That night, when I returned to Rome, I started a parade that had a giraffe in it, and no one in Rome had ever seen a giraffe before. The Senate was terrified of me, so they gave me a gold throne. While I was in the Senate room, they made me dictator for life. That night, my wife had a terrible dream that she was holding my lifeless body, and that I was warned by a fortune teller that something terrible would happen on this day. That day, while I was walking to the forum, I saw the fortune teller. He tried to tell me, but I did not listen to him, and I walked away. I walked inside the forum. I got stabbed once. The only weapon I had was a pen. So I stabbed it through his arm. 22 more blows, one after another. I put my toga over my head and collapsed dead on the Senate floor. The people will remember the power I grabbed, turning Rome from a republic to an empire.
Salve, bonjour, hello. I'm Helen Keller. I was born to Simba, Alabama in 1880. I was famous for my disabilities and the first person to go to school with them. Now, I was born in a kind and caring family in Tosimba. I had 4 siblings that were James Keller, William Simpson Keller, Mildred Keller, and Phillips Keller. When I turned 9 months old, I got an illness called scarlet fever, which gave me my disabilities. When I turned 19 months old, I learned my first word water by my teacher, Annie Sullivan, by soothing her hand on my palm, spelling the word out. When I turned 14, I went to a school in New York for the deaf people. I then moved to Massachusetts, and when I was 16, where I got a admission to Radcliffe College for the school. When I turned 22, I wrote my first book called The Story of My Life. I wrote 13 more books, and I also produced numerous novels. When I turned 36, I moved back to New York, and I met a man named Peter. We were going to get married, but my parents thought it was wrong for me to marry someone with my disabilities. When I turned 50, my partner died at the age of 70 and at her home. I sat on her deathbed, by her deathbed, as I was filled with grief. A few months have passed. I was gotten used to the fact of being alone without Peter or Annie. A few months later, I turned famous for being the one to produce numerous novels as well as understand others with my disabilities. When I turned the age of 87, I died in my sleep at Westport, Connecticut. I then was more famous than I was before because I was the first ever to win the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I am proud of these achievements as well as I am proud of my life and my family that have passed. Like I always said, things that are beautiful cannot be seen but must be felt with the heart.
I, Mary Anning, discovered many of the most exotic dinosaur fossils. You might also know me as Mary Ann. I was born in England on May 21st of 1799. Ever since I was 3, I would go to the seashores for hours looking for seashells and little fossils. I live with my parents, Richard and Mary Moore Anning. I have 9 siblings, but only me and my older brother, Joseph, survived to adulthood. In 1811, I discovered my very first fossil by the cliff near my house. I discovered a fossil of what came to be called an ichthyosaurus. They were very rare, but my discovery had a big impact on scientists. I wanted to find fossils for a living, so I became a paleontologist. I never attended college since I learned much from my father. After 12 years of searching, I found another fossil. I discovered the plesiosaurus, a reptile that was 9 feet long and lived in the sea. Many people didn't believe that I found it on my own since I was only 12 years old at the time. Others believed that I found it with the help of my brother, Joseph. And since I didn't go to college, I just studied for a long time. And I died at age 47 on March 9th of 1947 in Liam Regis.
Hi, I'm the famous actress Betty White, and I'm so happy to have my acting career for almost 7 decades. I was born in 1922, and soon after my birth, my family moved to California. I grew up in Los Angeles, but I was born in Oak Park, Illinois. My parents are Tess and Horace White. My father was an electrical engineer, and my mother was a homemaker. I loved animals. As a child, I loved animals, and even now I love them. My favorite animals were wolves. Then, I graduated from Horace, Maine, in Beverly Hills in 1936. After I graduated, I went to West Virginia College in 1991. During World War II, I served as an Army member for 5 years as a Marine Corps. I was married 3 times but only had one true lover, Alan Luden. We married in 1963, and he died in 1981 due to stomach cancer. I never had any children of my own, but I did have 3 stepchildren, David, Martha, and Sarah. I'm most famous for being the first woman to have creative control in front of the camera and behind, even for my comedic work. I won 2 Daytime Emmy Awards and was nominated 121 times and won 5. Then in 2021, I died because of a stroke in Brentwood, California. I had a closed funeral because I didn't want people to make a fuss over my life. I donated my money to many animal charities like American Humane. My death may have been a big impact on the television district, but I am happy with how my life went and even happier now that I can be with Alan.
Wow, that was quite the run by John Elway. I didn't think he had much speed, but still not as fast as me. Whoa, I didn't see you there. My name is Derek Vincent Thomas, and in my life I've been focused on family and football. I was born on January 1st, 1967 in Miami, Florida. I was raised by a single mother because my dad died in Vietnam War. I was 3 when I started playing football, and yeah, I was a star back then too. I later went on to play high school football, and in my senior year I had college offers. I went to play for Alabama University as a middle linebacker, and I loved all the players I worked with. Alabama did me well with the coaches, the teammates, and can't forget the fans that were cheering me on. But I entered the draft as a first-round, 4th overall pick from the Kansas City Chiefs. I entered the Pro Bowl for my first time in my career, and I later went in 9 more times. My career here as a Chief is unreal, but I worked so hard for this position just like everyone else should have. If you want a spot on the team, you have to try as hard as you can, and I promise that you will make it. Hard work gets you 4 fumble recoveries, 126.5 sacks, 11 seasons, 157 out of 169 games, and my name is Derek Thomas, and it's my pleasure to talk to you what I had done in my life when I got field time. On the field, accolades are great, but in order to reach your full potential, you have to overstep the boundaries of football and go out into community and be an all-pro there. I got into a car wreck, and I later died from a disease in 2000, February 8th. My name is Derek Thomas, and thank you for listening to me.
Oh, didn't see you there. Hi, I am Tim Grounds. Some should know that I'm a 3-time world champion goose caller. I was born on January 31st, 1958, and raised in Aurora, Illinois. My parents are Bill Grounds and Judah Grounds. I graduated from Johnson City High School in 1976. I've been interested in goose hunting since I was 5 years old, then proceeded to win 3 world champion goose calling contests, one in 1988, 1992, and 1994. Then I thought, why not start a company called Tim Grounds World Champion Goose Calls? My business started booming. People from all around the world started to buy my calls. One day I was out getting ready for the 2018 hunting season when I was out on my 4-wheeler when the 4-wheeler flipped on me and killed me in a quick manner on September 30th, 2018. 2018. That's where I left behind my son, Hunter, who has also won many championships. One thing I do know is that I left a lot of calls, people, and many careers behind, but at least I know I died doing something I loved.
Hello, today I'm back in the 1940s after World War II. I'm going to be interviewing 2 women that served in the war. Hello. Hi. Now, how did World War II start and when did it occur?
It began when Hitler invaded Poland from the west on September 1st, 1939. 2 days later, France and Britain declared war on Germany on September 3rd, starting World War II. But the U.S. didn't join until the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, which caused the U.S. to join the war.
Wow, why did Japan attack us?
Well, we have just learned that Japan attacked America because they wanted to prevent us from stopping their plans on Southwest Asia.
What happened to the U.S. during World War II?
Well, the fight between the U.S. and the Japanese increased when Japan became allies with Germany and Italy. The U.S. and Japan also fought at the Battle of Midway, where the U.S. won on June 4th to 7th, 1942.
On September 8th, 1943, Italy surrendered to the Allies, but Germany had control over northern Italy. Also on June 6, 1944, the Allied forces landed on the beaches of Normandy, which marks D-Day.
Wait, what is D-Day?
D-Day was when roughly 156,000 American, British, and Canadian forces landed on 5 beaches of France's Normandy region. Prior to D-Day, the Allies conducted a deception campaign designed to mislead the Germans about the intended invasion target. By late August 1944, all of northern France had been liberated. By the following spring, the Allies had defeated the Germans.
Wow, so D-Day was a very important event during World War II.
Correct, it led to the end of World War II.
Now finally, what was the impact on the U.S. in the war?
Well, after World War II, there were many economic changes in the U.S. The war brought full employment and a fair distribution of income. The war also brought the consolidation of Union strength and far-reaching changes in agricultural life. And housing conditions are better than they ever have been before. The war also created entirely new technologies, industries, and associated human skills.
Wow, World War II was a very, very important in history. Thank you for sharing with me.
You're welcome.
See you next time. Bye.
Hi, I'm Annie Oakley. My real name is Phoebe Ann Moses. I was born on a farm near Woodland, Ohio on August 13, 1860. I grew up with my 6 siblings. When I was 6, my father died from pneumonia. I was sent to work at an infirmary with the Eddington family. I helped with the younger children and learned how to sew. I was later sent to a terrible family that I called the Wolves. They promised to my mother that they would take good care of me and send me to school. They treated me like a slave and made me get up at 4 a.m. One night when I was escaping, I heard the husband say to his wife that she knows I am sending money home to her mother, but I am not. Once the husband and his wife finally went to bed, I crept out of the house. Then once I got to the lane, I ran. Once I got home, I got an interest in guns. At the age of 8, I started to hunt. I would send game to hotels and restaurants for the money, and I was able to feed my family. My mother didn't like my interest in guns because she thought it was a guy's job to hunt, but I wanted to prove her wrong. When I was 15, I entered a shooting contest in Cincinnati. My opponent was Frank Butler, a traveling sharpshooter. When I stepped up, he knew he could outshoot me. We were given 25 targets to shoot. We shot on and on until the last target. Frank missed, but I hit. I just won against a traveling sharpshooter. After the contest, Frank and I became friends. Soon after, we were married. I began traveling with Frank after that. That's when I got my name, Annie Oakley. After traveling with Frank for a few months, I became famous. When his partner got sick, he asked me if I wanted to be his partner for the time being. When he was on one of his shows on his last shot, one man said, "Let the girl shoot." When I had the gun and Frank was throwing stuff up, I fired and hit. The crowd went wild. From now on, they wanted me to shoot at every show, and that's what I did. In 1885, Frank and I joined Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. The show was famous all throughout the world. Then, I became the star of the show. During the show, I became famous. I traveled to Europe where I performed in Paris. I also performed for Queen Victoria and Kaiser Wilhelm II. After I retired from the show, I got in a train accident. I began working as an actress and writer until my death on November 3rd, 1926. People always knew me as Little Sure Shot. Aim at the high mark and you will hit it.
Hi, my name is Bobby Myers. I was born on June 27th, 1927, and died in a fatal crash on September 2nd, 1957. I am Bobby Myers. I was a race car driver, and here are some of my races I did not complete the Grand National Division again until 1956. I drove Ansel Reckenstraw's number 1 Chevrolet in a half-mile asphalt Palm Beach Speedway in West Palm Beach, Florida. I started the event in 10th and finished in 10th. At the Daytona Beach and road course, I started 63rd out of 76 and finished in 46th, failing to collect any of the purse money at the half-mile Dirt Wilson Speedway in Wilson, North Carolina. I started 24th and finished in 17th at Langhorne. I drove the number 15 Ford owned by Bill Stroh. I returned to NASCAR Grand National Division, completing in 1952, driving George Hudson's number 6 Ford in a Southern 500 at Darlington Speedway. The Ford's engine came apart on lap 145. The relegated relegated me to a 52nd finishing position. In a field of 66 cars in 1953, I drove the number 18 Oldsmobile in 2 NASCAR Grand National events in the Southern 500 and the 50th. I started 50th and worked my way to 20th finishing position at the 1 mile circle Langhorne Speedway in Langhorne, Pennsylvania. I finished 10th, Bobby. And then was my fatal accident.
Oh my, I'm sorry to say, but your brain nerves have been damaged. You'll need surgery. Hi, my name is Oliver Saxon. I'm a neurologist. I was born in 1933 to my parents. My brothers Michael and Marcus weren't very happy when my parents brought me home. They were always way more intelligent than me and got better grades in school. When I was growing up, my parents sent me to a boarding school to escape the air raids and strafing the city during World War II. At boarding school, I was way more behind than most of my classmates, but one of my school teachers wrote me a letter by saying that I would go far if I didn't go too far. But I always pushed myself to go farther. My brothers encouraged me to get smarter and try harder. When I lost my brother, I was in a very rough spot, but as time passed, that rough spot passed. Both my parents worked at a hospital. My dad was a general practitioner and my mom was a surgeon. So we did not grow up very poor. I was never married and had no kids, but had a boyfriend for 16 years, Bill Hayes. I died at age 82 to terminal cancer, and I had cancer that spread from my eye all the way to my liver. I had a rare tumor in my eye, and when they removed it, it left me blind. I also had functional paralysis 5, also known as psychogenic paralysis. As a surgeon, I had many accomplishments, one being I got to study the world of deaf people in sign language and in seeing voices. I also got to study the rare world of blind people, and I wrote about it in my book, A Leg to Stand On. You can find it on Amazon for $6.95.
DDT was a wonder chemical that killed insects, that destroyed crops and caused diseases. Hello there, my name is Rachel Carson. I was born in May of 1907 in Springdale, Pennsylvania. As I grew up, I lived on a big farm where we raised livestock. I loved learning about nature and animals, but my favorite thing to do was write. By the age of 10, I had written and submitted my writing. It was published in the St. Nicholas magazine in 1918. I continued to write stories through high school, and when I attended Pennsylvania College for Women, I majored in biology. I received my master's degree in zoology from Johns Hopkins University in 1932. After I graduated, I taught for a little while before my family struggled with money, so I got a job at U.S. Bureau of Fisheries, and I worked At first, I wrote for a weekly radio station. Then, in 1936, I got promoted as editor-in-chief of all publications. I worked there for 15 years. As I worked, I still wrote, and I published a book called Under the Sea Wind in 1941. But in 1951, my book, The Sea Around Us, made me famous. With the success of my book, I quit my job and began to write full-time. I relocated to Maryland, and I got a letter from one of my friends in Massachusetts. She noticed an alarming number of birds dying after a pesticide was sprayed, so I did an extensive amount of research. I found out that in the 40s there was a popular pesticide or insecticide called DDT. It was used to kill insects that destroyed crops. After World War II, farmers would use the pesticide to spray their fields. I was concerned about the effects it could have on the wildlife and human health. I discovered that birds would ingest DDT. This caused them to lay thin-shelled eggs and die prematurely. This caused a decrease in population of birds. Nearly 80% of eagles almost went extinct. In 1960, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I was battling it while I was finishing Silent Spring, and after I was finishing Silent Spring, and trying to support my research. On April 14th, 1964, I passed away at the age of 56. After my death, I was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom Award for my help in banning DDT. In 1972, the federal government finally banned DDT in hopes that it will help the environment grow healthier than it was before. DDT was being sold as this amazing chemical. DDT was being applied faster than the environment could handle, so it couldn't break it down. And it built up so much that it became toxic. I'm proud of my work in dedicating almost my whole life to banning DDT. I didn't know then, but I know now that I've saved millions of lives from animals to people.
Oh, beans are $11, corn is $3.50, and wheat is $6.30. I need to haul my grain soon because prices won't stay like that forever. So this is the 70s, and prices of grain is good and ground is inexpensive. And I'm farming with my John Deere 4440, a versatile 936, and a white field boss. And I have 500 acres, and I have 30 head of cattle, 15 pigs, and countless cats. And in the 70s, John Deere has came out with the John Deere 4440, 4430, and in the earlier 70s, they had the John Deere 4020, which was a breakthrough in the agricultural industry. And then International, at the beginning of the 70s, had the 2+2, then towards the end came out with the 1586, which were also agricultural breakthroughs. And if we have to throw it in, then I suppose we can talk about the white field boss, coming in at about 120 horsepower. And these were all very good middle-of-the-field tractors, and they still compare to new times. Lots of different equipment was used in this time period, one being the hay elevator, another was the pivot, which was used towards the end and was a fairly rare thing to have. Still, a major thing to this day in the agricultural business. Then we can talk about land. Land was usually inexpensive at this time, because it wasn't irrigated most of the time, and this was before prices started to raise. So why was the 70s actually a good time for agriculture? Well, first we can dive into wheat. Wheat was used to make bread and flour and other materials that we used to eat. Corn was needed for ethanol, and ethanol was introduced in 1976 when the California smog appeared, and there was a lot more awareness about lead-filled gases that were very harmful for the environment. So ethanol was really put into practice, and that is why corn went through the roof. Then we can talk about beans. Beans were needed to feed millions of cows throughout America to feed the ever-growing population in America. This is a few reasons why the 70s was such a good time for agriculture. Guess I better get hauling my grain. See you later.
Touchdown. I'm Rick Ranger. Today I'm known for the Nebraska quarterback who played through a game with collapsed lungs and broken ribs. I was born on July 9th, 1973 in Scotts Bluff, Nebraska. My dad is Warner. My mom is Jan. My mom worked at a school. My dad died when I was 7 years old from cancer. My dad was my biggest role model in life. And shortly after I was born, my dad bought me a fishing license. Shortly after my dad died, I lived with my mom and two sisters, Nicole and Drew Ranger. I went to Gilliland, Kansas High School and played football as the starting quarterback. I also played basketball and averaged 20 points a game. My team qualified for the state tournament, and I was considered one of Kansas's best basketball players. When I was 19, I got offered a full-ride scholarship to the University of Nebraska, where I played for Coach Tom Osborne, QB mentor Leo Hayden, and QB coach Ron Brown. Some of my accomplishments while I was at the University of Nebraska were being a part of 2 national championships and Phillips 66 Academic All Big 8 ABC Chevrolet Player of the Game, and graduating from the University of Nebraska. So I was considered one of the University of Nebraska's most communicative leaders. I spoke at many communicative hospitals and competed in the school Cool Jam. I was a big role model and I love kids. 2 days before the NFL draft, I was predicted to be one of the top 2 picks at the NFL draft. I took an airplane to the NFL draft 2 days before on April 18th, 1996, and people will always remember me as the Nebraska quarterback who could have made it very far.
Picture this. You're invited to this park by this rich man who claims to have resurrected dinosaurs. But about 10 or so minutes later, the power's out and so are the dinosaurs. And now you're staring at the jaws of the T-Rex. Now, if you haven't guessed by now, that'd be Jurassic Park, made by yours truly, me, Michael Crichton. So while Mr. T-Rex here tries to chomp my butt off, how about I tell you a little bit about myself? I was born October 1942. My father, John, was in the Navy overseas during World War II while my mother took care of us. I had 2 sisters and 1 brother. I was mostly interested in writing, but would make the occasional exception for journalism and editing. Then, in 1956, Harvard University had accepted me. I first studied English, but later switched to anthropology since it was, well, interesting. If you didn't know, anthropology is the study of humanity. I also studied the required classes for medical school, and then later graduated in 1964. Then I went to the University of Cambridge as a visiting lecturer in anthropology. Then, for the first time, well, I should probably switch it up besides then. So. Later, I had first attended medical school for the first time, and later graduated in 1969, earning my medical degree. While in medical school, I wrote a book under the name John Lang and Jeffrey Hudson called A Case of Need. I also served as a postdoctoral at the John Stock Institution for Biological Science, but the success of my novel led me to pursue my dream career, writing. I went on to make many good books, such as Terminal Man, Eaters of the Dead, and many more to come. But one of my best-selling books, Jurassic Park, which I wrote the screenplay for the 1993 screen film. After all the effort I put in, I sadly passed away in November 2008 at the age 66 from throat cancer in Los Angeles, California. But even though I'm dead, doesn't mean my career won't live on. Because shortly after my death, 2 of my complete manuscripts were found. Dragon Teeth and Pirate Latitudes. They're said to be published in 2009 and 2017. How's that for a happy ending?
Welcome back, everyone. If you're just joining us, I'm James Johnson.
I'm Robert Williams.
And I'm just Bob, and you're watching Excuse the Interruption. We just finished up talking about the Pete Rose scandal.
We'll be starting off with a big topic right now, whether or not Barry Bonds is on steroids.
Barry Bonds falls in the category of the steroids era, which began in the early 80s and ended in the early 2000s and includes players like Bonds, Sosa, and McGuire.
As some of you may know, Barry Bonds just recently hit his 73rd home run.
And there's speculations rising about the home run hitting monster.
People are suspecting that Barry Bonds is on steroids the whole time when he hit the 73 home run record.
And I think it's 100% true. He's on something. Barry was only averaging 30 to 35 home runs in the previous season. Now, during the so-called steroid era, he ties the record with 73 in a single season. That's almost a 40 home run difference. Isn't that a little suspicious?
Even McGuire and Sosa have both admitted to doing steroids, and they could have lied and said they were clean.
Bonds even took a urine test, and it came back positive for methadone and nandrolone, 2 performance-enhancing drugs multiple players have been using.
Bonds explained he wasn't on steroids and even tested negative for multiple tests as well.
Well, that's pretty believable.
But there are many different court documents showing that Bonds was using 3 different types of steroids. Bonds' trainer even came out and said he was injecting Bonds with performance-enhancing drugs all over the place. Most evidence is not pointing in Bonds' favor.
But he's not the only one. McGuire and Sosa have both been doing steroids for ages now.
Exactly. So why is everyone coming after Bonds? McGuire hit the home run hit the record when he was on steroids. Bonds only tied the record. How is that fair?
But Bonds is getting more fame for the record, and now the MLB will be forced to take major precautions in the offseason just because of this one player.
And the MLB is finally cracking down on steroids, and Bonds seems to be the reason why.
Bonds isn't the only one on steroids. He's just really good, so everyone comes after him for it. Bonds should be recognized as a good player either way.
But it's still not okay that he's using steroids.
Steroids aren't good for your health, and players shouldn't be using them. Performance enhancing or not.
Especially in the major leagues, which influences tons of people.
I guess steroids are pretty bad for the sport.
But even the government was trying to catch him.
Bonds isn't even in the Hall of Fame because of his affliction with steroids.
The government is also trying to catch him.
And they're succeeding.
I guess most evidence is pointing towards Bonds cheating.
I guess so.
For sure.
Well, that's the end for today's show.
I'm James Johnson.
I'm just Bob.
And I'm Robert Williams with Excuse the Interruption.
On the line. Hey there, I'm Coach John Wooden, famous coach that won 88 games in a row. Let me tell you about my story. I was born in 1910 to Roxy and Josh Wooden in Hall, Indiana. Me and my 4 siblings grew up on a farm. We grew up in poverty, so we had to work hard for what we wanted. This taught me later in life to be a hard worker. I attended Martinsville High School in Indiana in my senior year, where I led my high school basketball team to a state championship. After that, I decided to attend the University of Purdue for college basketball. In my time there, I received 3 All-American selections, College Basketball Player of the Year, and served as team captain. After that, I ended my basketball career as a player. I taught English and coached basketball and track at Dayton High School in Kentucky and South Bend High School in Indiana. Then served as lieutenant in World War II for 4 years. After that, I went back to coaching, but at a higher level. I got a job at Indiana State University and won 2 Indiana Collegiate Conference titles. Then, that led to bigger things when I got a job at UCLA. In my first year at UCLA, I won the Pacific Coast Division title. Then, 14 years later, I led UCLA to the Final Four for the first time. Then the year after that, in 1964, I led UCLA to a 30-0 season and winning my first NCAA championship. Following that, I won 9 more NCAA championships, 18 more conference titles, received 6 Coach of the Year awards, and broke the NCAA record, winning 88 games in a row. Then in 1975, I retired with an all-time record of 620 and 147. I coached some greats, most famously Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Then I stayed retired until passing away in 2010. I am pleased with all my wins, but most pleased about the lives I touched through coaching.
3, 2, 1, blast off. Hi, I'm Sally Ride. People know me as the first American woman in space. I was a role model for many young girls interested in science. I was born in 1951 in California. At a young age, I loved playing football and other sports with the boys. I was as good or better than some of them. I loved to be outside and breathe the fresh air. When I wasn't outside or challenging the boys in sports, I was reading. I got good grades easily and eventually got bored of school. When I went to high school, I got a lot more interested in science and wanted to pursue a job in it. When I went to college, I attended Stanford University. While I was there, I earned a lot of degrees, including 2 bachelor's degrees, a Master of Science, a doctoral degree in physics, a PhD, and an MA in physics. I went on to become an astrophysicist. I knew I was going to need an extra way to earn money, so I looked in the school paper for jobs. That was where I found what I knew I wanted to be. NASA needed more astronauts. I immediately applied. It took weeks, but finally in the mail it came, and I learned my application was accepted. I went to Houston to begin my training. In Houston, all of us who got accepted started training to become astronauts. Then NASA wanted to send astronauts on a mission into space, so they interviewed some. Luckily, I was one of the astronauts they interviewed. They then picked 7 astronauts to go into space, and I was one of them. That was my first mission on the Shuttle Challenger. On that mission, my job was to work the robotic arm that helps send satellites into space to give data back to Earth. On my second mission, I also went on the Challenger. My job on that mission was to again work the robotic arm for NASA. On that mission, I was with another girl, and we started talking, and then I realized that we went to first grade together. What are the chances of that happening? I was going to go on a 3rd mission into space, but the Challenger unexpectedly exploded the mission before I was scheduled to go. I was selected onto the team investigating the accident. My team and I investigated, and we found that failure of the primary and secondary right rocket boosters caused the accident because they failed to start. Before my 2 missions, I met astronaut Stephen Howey, and we got married. Sadly, 5 years later, we got divorced.
I did not get married again and died of pancreatic cancer in 2012 at the age of 61 after I had been fighting it for more than a year. I will always be remembered as a bright and strong woman who pushed the boundaries of space exploration.
Ugh, black and white photos of women playing sports. Boring. Whoa, where am I? Who are you?
My name is Lizzie Arlington, the first woman to ever sign a professional baseball contract. And you are?
I'm Kiara Gilroy, D1 softball player at UCLA. What are you wearing?
This right here is a 1940s women's baseball uniform.
Baseball? You mean softball?
Nope, I mean baseball. See, they didn't start calling it softball till the late 1900s. I mean, we wouldn't even notice for any sports until all the men went in to serve in World War II.
So when did women's sports actually begin?
Well, in 1875 is when the first women's baseball game was ever played.
Wait, you mean like dinosaur time?
Oh, you Gen Zs. Anyways, that started the spark for the All-American Women's Sports League, All-American Women's Baseball.
Enough about softball. What about all the other sports we have in my times?
Well, the Women's Golf Association was created and is now known as the oldest women's sports program in the U.S.
No, I'm talking about basketball and volleyball.
Well, USA Volleyball was created in 1928, but society didn't like the idea of women in basketball yet. But enough about me. What about your generation?
Glad you asked. In 1972, women got their first big break when the Title IX law was passed, which banned discrimination based on gender in education programs and gave women the same chances as men in sports.
Well, about time something happened.
But this was only the beginning. It was years until women actually started getting fair treatment because we still didn't get all the privileges men did.
Figures.
But these things only made women push harder for equality in sports. Female athletes fought and pleaded with organizations for the chances we deserved, just like Courtney Barnett did. In 1996, she sued a local high school for refusing her permission to participate in a sports event. And we now have the WNBA, NWSL, and the NWHL. These programs are dedicated to women's basketball, soccer, and hockey.
So times have changed. Man, that's the best thing I've heard all my life.
Yeah, women have way more opportunities to be involved in sports, whether they're playing, coaching, or spectating.
And it's all thanks to someone like us who've helped pave the way for the growing women's sports programs all across the country.
Just like Serena Williams once said, the success of every woman should be an inspiration to others.
We should raise each other up, make sure we're very strong, be extremely kind,
and above all, be humble.
Oh, didn't see you there. Hi, my name is John Lennon, a co-founder of one of the greatest, most influential rock bands of all time that has always helped people to come together. I was born in Liverpool, England in 1940. I won 4 Grammys in my life and lived to the age of 40 when I died in 1980. My life started during World War II on October 9th, 1940. I was born while England was being bombed by the Germans. My mother, Julia Lennon, was rushed to the hospital and gave birth while the walls were shaking. My father, Alfred Lennon, was a seaman and hardly ever home, leaving just my mother to take care of me. Because of this, she gave custody of me to my aunt, Mimi Smith, who raised me throughout my entire childhood. As a teenager, my favorite musician was Elvis Presley, and he even inspired me to learn to play the guitar. In 1956, I created my first band, the Quarrymen. I also met Paul McCartney that year. In 1958, tragedy struck. My mother was run over by an off-duty police officer and was killed. In 1959, George Harrison was added to the band, creating Johnny and the Moondogs, later becoming the Silver Beatles in 1960. In 1962, Ringo Starr was joined. In 1964, I published a book of short fictional stories and poems called A Spaniard in the Works. We then signed with Parlophone Records and released our first record, Love Me Do, and I married Cynthia Powell, a woman I went while going to college in Liverpool. As our fame spread through England, we reached #1 on Melody Maker chart with Please Please Me, and as our fame reached the rest of the world, we reached #1 in the US with I Wanna Hold Your Hand. In 1968, I divorced Cynthia Powell to marry Yoko Ono, a Japanese environmental activist. We spent our honeymoon protesting the war in Vietnam. In 1969, we released our final album, Abbey Road, before disintegrating. In 1970, we officially disbanded. And on December 8th, 1980, I was shot and killed by Mark David Chapman outside the Dakota, my apartment building in Manhattan.
Even though I don't live on today, people always remember me for my extraordinary music and unique lifestyle. I hope one day you'll join us and the world will live as one.
This is the iPhone 5. Hi, I'm Steve Jobs, and I created this. You may know me as the founder of the Apple Technology Company and a very well-known person, but I was not always so respected. I was born in February of 1955 and was soon adopted by Paul and Claire Jobs. My mother was a speech therapist and my father was a teacher. I had 2 siblings growing up. A few months after school started, my parents wanted me to attend a better school, so we moved to Los Altos, California. Studies say that after 4th grade, I likely had an IQ of 145, while a normal 4th grader has an IQ of 100. After I graduated high school, I attended Reed College in Portland. I dropped out after only 1 semester because none of the classes interested me. I went back home and got a job at Atari. In the summer of 1964, I spent several months in India seeking spiritual guidance. When I came back, I started the Homebrew Computer Club. On April 1st, 1976, Steve Wozniak and I officially founded the Apple Computer Company. A few weeks later, we received our first order for 50 Apple computers and set up the shop in my parents' garage. About 8 months later, we moved into our first real office in Cupertino, California. 15 years later, we released the Macintosh computer, the first at-home computer. In late 2001, we released the iPod, the portable music player. And in about 6 years later, we released the iPhone, which was record-breaking. You probably all have one in your pockets right now. I had a very interesting life, but sadly died on October 5th, 2011. I accomplished many things and had a very interesting life. In my lifetime, I made $250 million. And as I always said, stay hungry, stay foolish.
Okay. Greetings. I'm Michelangelo Buonarroti. I'm a well-known sculptor and painter. Perhaps you've seen my paintings upon the roof of the Sistine Chapel. What about my sculpture of David, and many other sculptures and paintings as well? I was born the 6th of March in Carrese, Italy, 1475. I'm the son of Ludovico Buonarroti and Francesca De Signa. I enjoy painting and sculpting. I also enjoy the beautiful pieces of art during the Renaissance. Most of my inspiration comes from the culture of my city and my time alive. My father placed me under the tutelage of Ghirlandaio as a young boy, but I learned nothing from him. Later, as a young man, I sculpted Pieta, Dawn of the Stairs, and Battle of the Centaurs. Now as an adult, I even traveled to Rome to build a tomb for Pope Julius II. After examining and studying human anatomy, I sculpted David in Florence. In my final years, I had no spouse or children. I defended my hometown of Florence by donating resources and became a military engineer. I was in charge of creating fortifications. I died in 1475, with my last painting being the Last Judgment fresco on the roof of the Sistine Chapel. Now, like always, there is no greater harm than time wasted.
25% of people who try to bend the law of attraction succeed.
Oh my, I'm so sorry.
Don't worry about it. Today we're here to tell you about attraction, the psychology and science, the love languages, and why we find people attractive.
Attraction may seem so simple, however, it has lots of scientific reasoning behind it. For instance, when people gravitate towards each other, it's due to endocrines in our bodies.
Exactly. These endocrine can be as simple as testosterone and estrogen. However, they can also be endocrine such as dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. These previously mentioned endocrine happen to be some of the same ones that are effects of reality-altering drugs.
These endocrines may sound dangerous, but they often will influence simple things like social media and video games, even real. Let's get chemical! The hypothalamus of the brain plays a huge role in attraction. Several regions of the brain affect love. These emotions are shut off by the prefrontal cortex of the brain.
Magneticism involves the brain pathways that control a thing called reward or prize behavior. This is why the first couple of weeks or even months in a new relationship can be so exhilarating and adrenaline boosting. High levels of dopamine and related endocrine are released, making us feel things cheerful and sometimes even euphoric. This may lead to people being unhealthy though, losing things like sleep and appetite. So yes, you can be so in love that you can't eat or sleep.
Endocrines are released, letting us feel all things good, rewarding, and powerful. These endocrines make sure they... Our friendly cohort of endocrines is also responsible for the bad sides of love. One specific endocrine known for this is oxytocin.
Enough talk about endocrine. Now let's get into the next area of attraction, the love languages.
We now know that love comes in many different forms. The 5 love languages are acts of service, gifts, words of affirmation, physical touch, and quality time. Let's dive deeper into each one, shall we?
We shall. First, words of affirmation. An example of words of affirmation would be, you are my new dream, and you are mine. But anyhow, words of affirmation is saying things that communicate your love, respect, and appreciation for each other.
The next one is acts of service. Acts of service is doing something kind for the other person and getting them to do something kind back for you. I'll take you to see the lanterns and bring you back home would be a kind act of service.
Yeah, it is. Now let's talk about gifts. Gift giving doesn't have to be romantic. Honestly, none of the 5 love languages have to be. This one just seems to be the most wholesome. It can be giving gifts, receiving them, making them, any of it. The only thing necessary is a gift.
Would giving me my satchel back be a gift?
Yes, I told you I'd give it back to you if you took me to see the lanterns on my birthday again.
And the fourth one, quality time. Quality time is spending time with the other person, giving them undivided attention. Quality time is the most preferred love language.
So would going on a picnic be a great example?
Yes, and the last one, physical touch. Physical touch can be showing love by holding hands, hugging, etc. Touch can strongly transmit a sense of being accepted and cared for.
And the last area of attraction to cover, what makes people attractive?
Good looks, ambition, and a good sense of humor all play a role in who you're attracted to. Proximity, past experiences, and biology also determine who you're attracted to. There are some that you're likely unaware of. Same goes for health and hygiene. You're not going to want to date somebody with deadly disease in their genetics.
Things like looks, status, and hygiene can make people more attracted to each other. People are more attracted to people with white teeth because it's more enticing and drawing than others.
People also find charismatic personalities attractive. It shows possible trust and endearment in a person, which makes our brain subconsciously think of a future with them.
Does anyone have any questions?
No.
And at last I see the light at the end of this speech.
Yes, it's like the fog is lifted from the air because now everyone knows about attraction.
They still can't get my nose right.
Shut up.
Oh, you all may know me as one of the best players with my 5 NBA titles, 2 Olympic gold medals, 2-time scoring champion, and over 33,000 career points. But I also did many good things off the court. I established a fundraiser for cancer that raised $80 million. I gave out basketball academy scholarships, and I gave 5 wishes to the Make-A-Wish Foundation each year. I was born in 1978, August 23rd, 1978. I moved to Italy when I was 5 years old for my dad's job and later began working on the fundamentals of basketball like dribbling and shooting. Upon moving back to the United States, I started high school. After high school, I got drafted to the Charlotte Hornets and later traded to the Los Angeles Lakers. I retired April 13th, 2016, and died January 26th, 2020. Although you may all know me as Kobe or Black Mamba, you will also know I did many good things on and off the court, Besides setting many basketball records, I prided myself in helping others, and that's what I want to be remembered for.
Hello, I'm Johnny Cash. I'm known as one of the best singer-songwriters in American history. I've had a lot of ups and downs in my life, so let's get into them. I was born on February 26, 1932, in Kingsland, Arkansas, to Ray and Carrie Cash. When I was just a toddler, my family had moved to Dyess, Arkansas. I worked along with my family in the fields. It was rough, but it paid the bills and made do. We sang in the fields to make time go faster. Sometimes at night, my family would gather on the front porch and sing while my mother played the guitar. In 1944, when I was just 12 years old, my brother Jack got into a terrible table saw accident, which ended his life at only 14 years old. Jack was my best friend, my big buddy, my mentor, and my protector. I attended Dyess High School in Arkansas and graduated in 1950. My family couldn't afford college, so when I was 18, I enlisted in the U.S. Air Force. I was sent off to an Air Force base in Germany, where my job was to translate Morse code. While I was in San Antonio for some training, I saw a really pretty girl named Vivian Liberto. We We started dating and got married in 1954. Our marriage was rough because I was often gone due to concerts, while she was left at home with the kids. Due to having concerts every other day, I started taking drugs to keep me awake. Vivian filed for divorce in 1966 due to my absence and drug addiction. One of the people I toured with was June Carter. She helped me with my drug addiction and our relationship got stronger. During one of our concerts together, I asked her to marry me. She said yes. During the 60s, my life was at its peak. I had good relationships, stayed away from drugs, and had a lot of songs ranked high on the country Billboard's chart, such as Ring of Fire, Folsom Prison Blues, and A Boy Named Sue. I continued to write and sing songs during the 70s and 80s. I stopped touring in the 90s but continued to sing. In 2003, my wife June died at the age of 73. I tried to busy myself with work, but my own health got in the way. I died later that year in September due to complications with diabetes at the age of 71. I hope my name will forever be known as not just a great singer, but a great person in general. Like I always say, until things are brighter, I'm the man in black.
Hello, I'm Fanny Durack, the first female Olympic gold medalist. I was born in 1889 in Sydney, Australia. In my free time when I was young, I'd like to swim. I would swim around the world. I would get many offers to swim at places when I got older, and I became an Olympic swimmer. When I retired from swimming, I helped coach swimming. In 1912, there was a public demand for me to go to the Olympic Games in Stockholm. So they had to change the forbidding about women competing in swimming. So Hugh McIntosh's wife paid for the funds. I sailed for Sweden v London. When I swam the Olympic Games in Stockholm, I swam the 100-meter freestyle in 1 minute 19.8 seconds and broke the world record. I also won hands down on the Sterling crawl. Mina Whalen influenced me. She motivated me to be a better swimmer. She pushed me. I also did the same for her. But not just Mina. My coach also helped me. All this work paid off. I became the first female Olympic gold medalist. I got 56 medals or 100 more trophies. I became the first female gold medalist for Australia, and I became an Olympic swimmer. My accomplishments show that you can do whatever you want to do, and you never know, you might get winning or fame out of it. I died on March 20th, 1956, Stanmore, Sydney, Australia. I died from cancer. I was so proud of myself for being the first female Olympic gold medalist. From where my life started and from where it ended, my life was amazing.
Hurry, let's go. They can't be far behind us. Oh, hi, I'm Harriet Tubman. The world knows me as an Underground Railroad leader, or some call me the Moses of my people, but my real name is Harriet Ann Tubman, and I was born in 1820 in Maryland, and I had no records of birth. Me and my parents and 8 of my siblings were all enslaved. In 1844, I married John Tubman, and 5 years later, me and 2 of my brothers left our plantation in Maryland and traveled along the Underground Railroad. 2 of my brothers turned back, but I granted freedom, and after I gained freedom, I remembered that there were still many people still in slavery. So I became an Underground Railroad conductor for 8 years and saved 70 people from slavery. After my first husband was killed in a fight, I married Nelson Davis, and we adopted a girl named Grady Davis. The Underground Railroad is a secret path through the North America, and I was an Underground Railroad I worked as an Underground Railroad conductor for 8 years, and I can say what most conductors can't say. I never ran my train off the tracks, and I never lost a passenger. I, Harriet Tubman, have saved many people from slavery, but sadly in 1920, I died at the age of 90. I will always be remembered for my outstanding perseverance and patience. Remember, every great dream begins with a dreamer. Always remember you have the strength, the patience, and the passion to reach for the stars to change the world.
All aboard the Titanic leaves in 10 minutes.
I've been waiting 3 years to board the Titanic.
Give me your ticket. You're holding up the line.
Yes, sir.
You may enter the Titanic. Middle class, second class, middle deck.
Thank you. Good day.
You too, ma'am. Today we'll be talking about what it's like to board the Titanic, April 14th, 1912. Imagine you're sleeping and you hear screaming. You walk out and you see people running, sprinting, jumping off, and yelling, "The ship is sinking." This is what it was like for many people April 14th at 2:20 a.m. Something that doesn't help with all the people dying on the Titanic is that there are only 20 lifeboats. And for the first couple lifeboats, they only had 16 through 20 people on them, while they could have had 65.
Back then, tickets were only sold for $20. Now, the lowest amount you can get for a ticket is $1,024. Did you know that the Titanic was the size of a 17-story building? The Titanic had a lot of flaws. First of all, it only had a few lifeboats for all 2,200 people on the boat that day. Also, the captain was going over 26 miles per hour, which led to the boat taking a wrong turn. The weather conditions were under 28 degrees Celsius, or Fahrenheit, or for some people, -2 degrees Celsius. When they went 26 miles per hour, that led to the captain crashing the iceberg. A person on board shot up 36 flares. Less than 3 hours later, a boat came, but they were too late. They were either on a cold lifeboat or frozen to death.
My name is Blackbeard. Actually, it's Edward Teach. I was born in 1680 in Bristol, United Kingdom. I was the first pirate to try using a blockade attack on a city harbor. I started out in Queen Anne's War as a privateer who was someone hired by their country to take down enemy ships. After the war, any unlicensed ship that was still sailing was counted as a pirate ship. I decided to become a pirate. Benjamin Hornigold taught me how to be a pirate. I captained a ship in his fleet, but eventually I decided to go on my own journey. On my own, I made a fleet of ships that I used to perform a blockade attack on Charlestown's harbor. The attack worked. I captured many ships and their goods. After I left, stories about me started spreading on the mainland. Alexander Spotswood decided to try to stop it. He hired Robert Maynard to hunt me down. Maynard captured one of my pirates and got him to say where I was. To help Maynard reach my base, he hired 2 smaller ships, the Jane and Ranger. On November 22nd, 1718, Maynard found my base on Ocracoke Island, which I was not expecting. We began to fight, and my ship lost control, crashing into the rocks. The Ranger crashed into the remains of my ship. Almost everyone on board the Ranger had gone below deck. I yelled, "Let's jump on board and cut them to pieces." We charged onto the deck, but we were quickly outnumbered. After 20 stab wounds and 5 gunshot wounds I had lost, they chopped off my head and hung it on the front of their ship. I can't share all the glory for becoming famous. Charles Johnson included me in his book, A General History of Notorious Pirates, and people became interested in pirates.
Foot in the stirrup, swing your leg over. That's how you get on a horse. Pretty simple, right? Well, not when you're getting up from a suicide drag. I was named State's Most Superb Horsewoman and entered the Cowgirl Hall of Fame. In case you were wondering, my name is Connie Griffith. My love for riding all started when my father bought me a Shetland pony named Nellie for my 4th birthday. When I got older, I rode my 2 horses, Toby and Nix, almost daily. In my teens, I was in a horse club. And one day, me and my father attended the Denver Stock Show. That's where I met my future husband, Dick Griffith, but I didn't know it yet. For my 12th birthday, I got a used Porter trick riding saddle. Man, did I love that thing. I started trick riding lessons with my future husband, Dick Griffith. At 17, I became high school rodeo queen and was named State's Most Superb Horsewoman. Even though Dick and I had I became valedictorian and attended Colorado State University while continuing trick riding lessons. Even though Dick and I had a significant age gap, we still got married and had a son named Tad. Tad went on to become a 3rd-generation trick rider, and Dick was a future pro rodeo Hall of Fame bull rider. I performed at the Madison Square Garden in New York City. I also performed over 6,000 times at the Excalibur Hotel. I also got to perform at the King Arthur's tournament in my lifetime. I made all of my costumes, from the sparkliest to the plainest. I made them all. I trained over 100 trick horses with the help of my husband. My husband and I built our own trick riding school from the ground up. Tad went on to teach his kids how to trick ride. I was performing when I died on August 15th, 1998. I was riding my horse Winnie when she stumbled mid-stride and somersaulted. I was crushed underneath her. I am so very grateful that my father helped me grasp my passion for riding when he did. If he didn't, I don't know where I would be. Do it with style and smile was always my motto.
An iron curtain has ascended across this continent. Iron Curtain became one of the most terms attributed to the Cold War, Eastern and Western Bloc. Many know me as inspiring. I was more than that. So I tell you my story of me, Winston Churchill. I, Sir Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill, was born in 1874. I was born to Lord Randolph Churchill. I got bad grades at school, so you're not alone. Then I joined the Royal Cavalry and went to a variety of places. Later on, I left the army to become a journalist. Then in 1900, I was elected a conservative member of parliament, but then I defected to the Liberals in 1904. Pretty soon, I became the first Lord Mayoralty. After a Gallipoli campaign, which I had to evacuate, I resigned from the position. And following the Tory defeat in 1929, I spent the next 11 years out of office. In 1939, Nazi Germany invaded Poland and sparked World War II. I criticized the appeasement methods put in place by Neville Chamberlain. Then I was right, since Nazi Germany's thirst were not quenched. Then in 1940, Neville Chamberlain resigned, and I led an all-party coalition to defeat Nazi Germany. I gave inspiring quotes and speeches to raise British morale during the darkest days of the war. I was one of the big three, consisting of me, Roosevelt, and Stalin. Then in 1945, I was sent out of office again, and I worked on making speeches. But then in 1951, I was elected a prime minister again, but I often worked by my bedside due to my health conditions. Then in 1955, I resigned due to my failing health. Then in 1965, I died, but my wife still lived after me. I was inspiring, funny, handsome, in my opinion. I will have to say goodbye. I have never developed indigestion from swallowing my own words.
Good evening. Today we pioneers are going to talk a little bit about our lifestyle, the journey we went on, and some of the different challenges we faced.
First, we will tell you some of the different challenges we went through during our journey. Our crossings were an incredible, difficult, and exhausting challenge. We also had to deal with lots of different illnesses. Some of the most common illnesses were smallpox, measles, mumps, and the flu. We also encountered deadly animals, including rattlesnakes and bison.
Now we will tell you a little bit about our pioneer lifestyle. Some things the women did daily were wash clothes, make soap, collect firewood, and cook and clean.
The men took care of the livestock, split firewood, repair tools, hunted, or even ran family business. Children had to clean, chop wood, feed farm animals, make butter, and help wherever they were needed.
Some popular foods that were cooked were soda biscuits, coffee, hardtack, beans, rice, cornmeal mush, and bread.
These foods may not sound or look good, but it was all we could make with the few ingredients we had.
Our housing wasn't exactly ideal. Some of us had sod homes that were not easily built because cutting sod was difficult without the right proper tools and help.
Our roofs were made out of brush, mud, and sod, and animals occasionally fell through the roof and landed in the home. If you were lucky enough, you had a sod or log home. If not, then you had a hole dug out of the side of the hillside or the ground. For holidays like Christmas and Thanksgiving, we celebrated in many different ways.
For Christmas, we made paper cones and filled them with nuts, candy, and dried fruit, and we also played many games.
For Thanksgiving, we played balls, sang, danced, and played many more games.
What we normally did was we celebrated a lot with our families, fellow pioneers, and neighbors.
Some of the famous pioneers from this era went through all of the risks and dangers of this lifestyle. Some examples of these pioneers include Davy Crockett, Wild Bill, Brigham Young, and many more.
Davy Crockett was a frontierman, soldierman, and politician.
Wild Bill was a pioneer, soldier, scout, lawman, cattle rustler, gunslinger, gambler, showman, actor, and over his involvement in many famous gunfights.
Brigham Young was a pioneer, American religious leader, and politician.
Traveling was slow and exhausting.
We traveled by foot and in covered wagons pulled by oxen and mules.
Today we shared with you some information about our pioneer lifestyles, the challenge we faced, our journey, and some famous pioneers. Thank you for joining us.
Today you noticed a game of basketball, but didn't know it existed until me. Hi, my name is James Naismith. Today I'm known as the creator of the famous sport basketball, the creator of the very first football helmet, and a physical education teacher. But I didn't grow up as easy as you would expect. I was born in 1861 in Canada. When I was 9, my father, John, who worked as a saw hand, and mother, Margaret, who worked in the house and took care of me and my 2 siblings, Robbie and Annie, died because of typhoid fever. After they died, I was orphaned until my uncle Peter Young and religious grandmother took me in. When I was young, I grew up on a farm and enjoyed playing catch and hide and seek. When I was 15, I dropped out of high school and became a lumberjack for 5 years. Then returned back to my school and got my secondary education in 1883. I graduated in 1887 with an AB degree in theology and continued my education at Presbyterian College for 3 years and graduated in 1890. Gosh. That year I enrolled in a 2-year physical education training at the YMCA. You may wonder why I created basketball. I created basketball because I was under orders from Dr. Luther Golick, head physical education teacher. I was given 14 days to create a game that would create athletic distraction, could give his track athletes, keep his track athletes in shape, and not take up much room. So I created basketball from the game lacrosse and duck on a rock. You may ask, what is duck on a rock? Duck on a rock is a game that you throw a rock at a target on top of many other rocks. So I created the game basketball. After I died in 1939 at the age 78 because of a heart attack. After I died, I was remembered with many street names and athletic buildings in my honor. The Naismith Hall of Fame was also created to honor coaches and players in my honor. Remember in my words, I want to leave the world a better place than the way I left it.
3, 2, 1, and we have liftoff. The space race, one of the most significant accomplishments in human history, is how it changed tech and people as we know it. Today we will talk about how it started, how it progressed, and how it ended.
The space race first started on October 4th, 1957, when the first satellite, or man-made object, was launched into space. Its name, Sputnik 1, and it was launched by the Soviet Union. The rise of the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the U.S. fueled the space race. The satellite reached space by being carried in an R-7 rocket. This scared America because this meant that it had enough power to send bombs that the Soviet Union had enough power to send bombs to America. Fast forward a few months, and the Soviet Union launches yet another rocket containing Sputnik 2, holding a dog named Lokia inside of it. Sadly, the dog died 4 hours into the flight.
The U.S. responded to this by launching their own rocket. Their mission was to monitor micrometeor impacts, record the temperature above the Earth, and most importantly, to explore the radiational environment around the Earth. Following would be another rocket containing Vanguard 1. Their mission was to launch it off the Earth, around the Earth, and land back onto the Earth. They successfully did that.
Teresa was the first woman ever to be launched on Vostok 6. It successfully went to the moon and came back. But on March 5th, 1965, the first woman ever to be launched into space was Alexis, which was groundbreaking towards the Soviet Union's towards the Soviet Union's technology. But ultimately, the worst year for the Soviet Union and the U.S. was when
was 1967 when lots of people died, including Vladimir Komorov. This happened when the Soyuz 1 capsule did not open its parachute, coming back into the Earth's atmosphere.
The first man was launched into space, and his name was Yuri Gagarin, and he traveled at 116 miles high and made it back onto Earth successfully. Fast forward a few years into December 21st, 1968, where the U.S. has successfully put a man in a capsule and launched him around the moon and back onto Earth successfully. About a half a year later, Apollo 11 was launched, and 4 days later, we have landed on the moon. The Eagle has landed, and those aren't all the words that were said. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, are some of the most famous words that Neil Armstrong said as he took his first steps on the moon.
Wow, you made it to the end. How amazing. And did you find this topic interesting? Well, if you didn't, how did you make it to the end? Anyways, today we started we spoke about how it started, how it progressed, and how it ended.
Okay. Swish. That's the sound of my signature move, the hook shot. Hi, I'm Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and today I will tell you about my life as a father, author, actor, and athlete. I grew up in New York and attended St. Jude's Elementary School. As a kid, I enjoyed many sports, but basketball stood out to me because of my great height and size. After middle school, I was recruited to Power Memorial Academy and won 3 state championships. Moving on to college, I decided to go to UCLA. Back then, there was a rule which made freshmen, including myself, not able to play varsity. For the next 3 years of college, I carried my team to 3 national championships. Coming into the NBA draft, I proudly joined the Islam religion, changing my name from Ferdinand Alcindor Jr. to the name you all know me as today, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I was drafted by the Bucks, and after 6 seasons with the Bucks, I claimed my first NBA title. I wasn't satisfied with the Bucks, so I was traded to the LA Lakers, adding an additional 5 more championships, and after 21 seasons in the NBA, I was ready to retire. After my career, I continued to help out the Lakers by being the special assistant coach. Today, I live as an author and a proud father of 5 kids.
Up until there we go. Hi, my name is Amelia Earhart, and I'm best known for being the first woman to fly across the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean. I was born in 1897 in Addilyn, Kansas. As a child, I liked to play basketball and football and play with my sister Merle. As I got older, I dropped out of school to become a World War I nurse's aide. I studied to become a mechanic, but soon after I was back in school to have a career in medicine. I hung out with Sam Chapman, and he proposed to me many times, but every time I said no. I went to an air show in Long Beach, and I knew it was my thing. I took my first flying lesson, and I loved it. Then I bought my first airplane. My parents got divorced later on, but that didn't stop my dream of flying. I became the first woman to fly across the Atlantic as a co-pilot. It was an amazing experience. I wrote books, newspapers, and magazine articles. George Pumpman was my publisher, and after I hung out with George Pumpman a lot, he became my husband. One day I told George that I wanted to fly across the Atlantic again, but alone this time. I started off in a red and gold single-engine airplane. I landed in Northern Ireland. The farmer there didn't believe me, but it was true. I became one of the most celebrated people in my time. I set my goals high and tried to fly around the world. I set off my trip with Fred Noonan. I was about 3/4 the way there, and I set off for Helen Island. I was getting low on fuel. I couldn't find the island. People began searching for me, and they sent out many airplanes and ships, but they couldn't find me. I died at 41 years old. As I always say, the most effective way to do it is to do it.
As I run the bases, I hear the crowd cheering as I hammer one to left field and out of stands. Hello, my name is Jackie Robinson. I'm known for being the first black baseball player to disperse the racial boundaries of baseball. I was born in Georgia, 1919. Being the youngest of 5 children born in poverty made it hard for me to get the things I needed, so I eventually moved to Pasadena, California. I went to school at John Muir High School. I then went to college at UCLA, where I won 4 varsity letters in 4 different sports: football, basketball, track, and baseball. Although I was a great athlete, I had to move to Honolulu due to financial hardship. While in Honolulu, I played football for the Honolulu Bears, a semi-pro football team. 1 year later, Congress declared war on Japan, and I joined the military. After the war was over, I came back and joined an all-black baseball league, where I played for the Kansas City Monarchs. After playing only 1 season of the baseball league, a man by the name of Branch Rickey, a scout to find the best players, found me and invited me to join the Brooklyn Dodgers. While I was with the Dodgers, together we won the 1955 World Series title. Even though I was a great player, I got a lot of hatred from other teams, audiences, and even my own teammates. But the manager of the Dodgers kept me. In 1947, I won the Rookie of the Year award. Additionally, in 1949, I won the MVP. But after my season ended, I decided that I had enough baseball in my life and I retired. I will never forget my teammates and the people that fought for my rights to play. After I retired, I became a speaker to prevent segregation. But then sadly, in 1972, I died due to heart problems and diabetes. But my legacy will go on. I changed what people could do in baseball and helped prevent civil rights and segregation. I will always be known as the man who changed baseball.
As I see a tethered mountain lion in a box full of rattlesnakes, my hands are sweaty, my heart is racing, and it's time for me to jump. As I hit the 20-foot ramp, I hear the crowd go wild. I made it! I landed it! And I thought this was the most thrilling and exciting feeling in the world. And at that moment, I knew what I was going to do for the rest of my life. Most of you will know me as Evel Knievel. I, Robert Knievel, was born on October 17, 1938 in Butte, Montana. In school, I was a troublemaker because I had endless energy and love for danger. But I was also good at track and field and hockey. When I was a sophomore, I decided to quit school and go work at the copper mines. While I was there, I would show off by doing wheelers with the earth mover, and one time I overdid it, and I knocked out the power for Butte for a couple of hours. You may wonder how I got my nickname, Evel Knievel. One day in 1956, I was in a jail cell right by William Knavel, and his nickname was Awful Knavel because it rhymed. And that's how I got my nickname, Evel Knievel, because it rhymes. Then a few years later, I was a co-owner at a Honda motorcycle company in Moses Lake, Washington. There's no business there for a little while, so I decided to arm wrestle people, and if they won, they got a $100 discount off a motorcycle. To gain even more business, I decided to jump a few things, and that's all where it began. Later, in 1966, in California, I jumped through pickups, I jumped through firewood ply walls, I did wheelies, and my most famous jump was at Caesar's Palace Hotel in Las Vegas when I was televised. And some other famous jumps were Snake River Canyon and Wembley Stadium when I jumped 13 buses. You will always remember me as the creator of Daredevil, because only after 15 years, my fans loved me so much that in 1999, I was inducted into the Motorcycle Hall of Fame. And even after my death of 2007, November 30th, I still inspire many people to go faster, farther, and more dangerous. Like a voice said, people don't come to see me die, they come to see me defy death.
I'm here interviewing Mr. Travis Walton about the UFO incident that happened 45 years ago in Chilo, Arizona. Okay, Travis, let's start from the beginning. Tell me about the day it happened.
Hi, so it was November 5th, 1975. My buddies and I were getting ready to go home after a long day at work when we saw this weird-looking glow in the sky.
Can you describe this glow?
Yeah, it was a soft, golden glow just beyond the trees and an opening on a hill.
Okay.
And me, being, young and dumb, my brain was just kind of fumbling with questions, overflowing with curiosity. It was like everything around me was just kind of a blur.
And so you approached it?
Yes, ma'am. I ran through the trees and I followed the light to the source.
And what do you see?
I looked up and there was this silver disc-shaped machine just hovering about 20 feet off the ground.
And something really strange about it was the noise it was making. It was like a deep, hollow-sounding hum.
And then what happened?
And then I remember all of my buddies yelling at me from the truck and telling me to, like, get back and leave it alone. But I couldn't go back now. I was just kind of frozen there and staring up at it.
Like you couldn't move?
Yeah, I couldn't move. I was just frozen there. I was hot and nauseous, and I heard people screaming at me, but I couldn't move. I, like, lost control over my body. I remember feeling hot-headed and dizzy, like I was going to pass out. And then I felt movement in my bones, and I remember feeling like I was going to snap in half, like the way my body was just arched backwards and my limbs were just kind of hanging there. It was so weird. I remember feeling my feet lift off the ground, and my brain was just like almost not working. I couldn't really process what was happening to me.
So did you get sucked into the machine?
No, actually. So I remember I was slowly getting further and further away from the ground, and then it just kind of dropped me. And the sound stopped for a second, and then I remember that was when I heard all the boys screaming things like, "It got him, and let's get out of here." And so I heard them drive away and leave me there on the 4th floor where I did eventually black out.
Do you remember what happened when you woke up?
Yeah, I remember waking up in a hospital bed next to a cart with what looked like surgery tools, and I was strapped to the bed. And so I remember yelling for anyone to tell me what was going on when the door opened.
So who came through the door?
So I know who or what, rather, walked through the door. I don't really know what I would describe it.
Can you describe it?
Well, it was only about 4 feet tall, pure white, head to toe, like a glossy white. And I remember being so scared as it walked up to the cart and it grabbed a tool as 2 more of them followed. And I remember doing everything I could to try to escape the straps, and they just walked out.
They just left?
Yeah, they just left the room. And then something else came in. These things looked more human-like, but they stood over me and lowered a gas mask over my face when I blacked out again.
What do you best remember when you woke up again?
When I woke up, I remember it was dark outside in the real world again. And I pretty much just started walking, and I got to Hebner, Arizona, and I remember seeing phone booths outside of a gas station.
So who did you call?
My sister was the only one who lived near that part of the country, so I called her, but her husband Grant answered the phone.
Do you remember the conversation?
Yeah, I was in an incredible mental state. It's really hard to describe, but I remember, shouting into the phone, like, "They brought me back."
Did Grant believe you?
No, actually, he didn't sound very amused at all. At first, he said I had the wrong number, and I remember screaming, hysterically into the phone, "It's me, Travis." And he told me he would be right there, but he still didn't really sound like he believed me.
So did he ever actually show up?
Yeah, actually, Grant and my brother Dwayne came and got me.
What did they say to you?
Well, Grant was so glad he actually did come because they were both worried sick. Everybody was worried sick about me. I only remember about an hour and a half inside that thing, but Dwayne did eventually tell me I was missing for 5 days.
Wow, well, that's all the time we have, so thank you for allowing this interview.
Man, I can't believe the 1980s are almost over.
I know, those 10 years went by so fast.
Look at this newspaper I got today. It talks about the decade in review.
Like all the major events?
Yeah, isn't it rad?
Oh, I remember when Ronald Reagan became elected as president in '81. It wasn't until the beginning of this year that George Bush got put in office.
I remember that too.
And on the topic of Ronald Reagan, I remember when he gave a speech about the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1987.
Oh yeah.
And do you remember when NASA's space shuttle launched in '81?
It was insane. Speaking of insane, do you remember the Thriller album released by Michael Jackson in 1982?
Best songs ever. And I better add some of those songs to the New Year's Eve party playlist.
What about the futuristic Disney Park Epcot that opened in 1982? I don't think we went there until a few years after it opened.
That sounds about right. It was a very enjoyable trip. I screamed like on every ride.
Oh yeah, right here it says that Epcot was one of the most thrilling amusement parks in the whole world.
Let me see that paper. In 1983, Cabbage Patch Dolls got released.
Every girl's dream doll.
Yeah, they were. Only 1 hour till midnight.
I remember when the 23rd Summer Olympics were hosted in LA.
And that copy of Nike Air Jordans that were sold for $500,000 in 1985.
I know, like it's just a pair of shoes.
New Coke was also released in 1985.
So refreshing.
What about your favorite show to binge watch?
Full House?
Nice. Try and guess when it debuted on ABC for the first time.
I think 1985. Oh wait, no, it was 1986.
Yep. You got it. And what about your favorite movie from the 80s?
It'd probably have to be Top Gun, at least 1986.
That was a good one. And it seems like just yesterday the stock market crashed.
It's been 3 years.
It says right here is on October 19th, 1987.
With a 22.6% drop.
Well, 20 seconds till midnight. We better get ready.
I can't wait for the 90s.
I know, but they probably won't be as radical as the 80s.
Probably not. Quick, get ready. 11 seconds till midnight.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year!
Welcome to the Jane Stevens Show. Today I'm here with
Sarah Cameron,
and we're going to be talking about the 70s. So let's get this started.
All right, let's do this. I'm ready.
Okay. So what was your favorite thing about the 70s?
One thing I liked about the 70s was when the Winter Olympics started and took place in Tokyo.
Yeah, I would agree. That was a really good thing. The next thing I wanted to ask you is about the fashion trends.
Wow, you're reading my mind because I was just going to tell you about that. I'm going to tell you about how fashion trends were like back then. Fashion trends were like colorful patterns, really bright clothing, and big hair, but one thing for sure was the flared jeans.
Yeah, I have a pair of those jeans. I would agree not a lot of trends stayed in trend because a lot of people don't wear them anymore.
Yes.
And yeah. So the next thing I wanted to ask you was, what was your least favorite thing?
Not a lot of bad things happened, but I'll think about it.
Yeah, I would agree. Not a lot of really bad things happened in the 70s. Another question I have is, what about politics?
Well, I thought it was a good idea that Richard Nixon committed resign because he took abuse over his power and obstruction against justice.
Yeah, that was a really dark moment. But a good thing was America's 200th birthday was celebrated in 1976. Mm-hmm. So that was a good moment for them.
Another good moment was when in the 1970s was the end of the Vietnam War.
Yeah, that was a good one. And that's all the time we have left, folks. See you next time.